Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I'd like to offer my greetings to everyone this morning and to thank you for inviting me to come here and give you the Dhamma talk this morning. I have to apologize this morning. My throat is a little dry, so I might be clearing it and taking breaks to drink water a little bit. So I apologize for that. So this is my second time coming to the BSV and coming down to stay here and to give a Dhamma talk here. The last time I was here was about this time in 2022, so a few years ago. So I've been living in Canada for a while and have just come back to this part of the world. And I came to Australia because a monk I'm friends with has a monastery up in Sydney, and he had a very large event. They were putting in the SEMA, and they had this big SEMA ceremony, and they had a huge group of monks from Thailand coming for the ceremony. So I came early to help do the work and set up for the ceremony, and but it's been really nice because I'm been reconnecting with a lot of old friends. So up in Sydney, seeing these monks that I haven't seen in several years, that I've been friends with, meeting all the lay people, and also coming down here to Melbourne again. There's meeting all these monks that I've been good friends with for many years, some of them almost 20 years now, and then getting to meet lay people again and reconnect to a lot of you that I've been seeing online for the last year as I was doing these online meditations. And so with all of this and kind of everything which has been going on, one of the themes that I've been reflecting on and really seeing is this the theme of kalyana mitta. So like our good friends, or their beautiful friends, or I think in this context we can say it is our Dhamma friends. And so when the Buddha spoke very high praise of having good friends, having our Dhamma friends. So at one time his his personal attendant, the Venerable Ananda, had said to him, I think having good friends, having Dhamma friends, is like half the path of practice. And the Buddha said, no, don't say that, don't say that. It's not half the path, it's the whole of the path. And so this is really high praise, coming from the Buddha. And the Buddha didn't give false praise. He didn't just say stuff without meaning it. So when the Buddha said this, he really meant that this is an absolutely important part of our path of practice and supporting us in our path of practice. But a lot of times we hear something like this, like it's really important to have good friends, and it almost seems like it's counterintuitive. It's going against what we assumed, because we hear so many times oh, you should be going for solitude, the monks going out into the forest and living at the root of a tree by themselves. So you think, well, that seems the opposite of having good friends. Or we're being taught to give up all of our attachments, but then isn't having good friends attachments? Like why did the Buddha tell us to do this? Why did the Buddha praise it so highly? So when I was staying with Lumpur Biak, he would explain this. He would talk about this because in the Ajahn Chah tradition, the one I've ordained in, one of kind of like the defining factors, or one of the really unique things about it, is how much emphasis there is for the monks to do things together. We practice together. We do morning and evening chanting and meditation. We do work together. We do so many things in our life we do together. And it's really encouraged for us to make these friends, have these good friends, and work together. And Lumpur Biak would say that the reason Lumpur Cha had us do this is to support each other and to help each other out. So he was saying, back in with Lumpur Mun's time, especially with the old generation Lumpur Mun disciples, and he'd, say like Lumpur Sam, Lumpur Tate, Lumpur Fun, all these ones, when they ordained, it was very easy for them to practice. Lumpur would say that they could just go out into the forest and, sit for meditation for 5 hours by themselves, no problem. But he said, we're actually not like that. So for us, it's a little different. It's a little more, difficult. So we do these things together to help each other out, to support each other. So when I first went to Wat Pananachat, this was many years ago, there was a different abbot at the time, and there was a different style of practice there, a style of training. So at that point, there was no morning chanting, there was no group meditation, no group chores or anything. You just did everything on your own. And I found it very, very difficult. So, at the bell at the time at the monastery would ring at 3 a.m, and I'd get up and go to sit meditation by myself in my kuti. And I'd, be sitting for a while. And then, after a little while, my back would start to get a little sore and it would start to hurt. And so I'd want to rest my back. So I'd lie down. But I wasn't going to go to sleep. I'm just, I'm going to stay mindful. Mine's going to stay with the breath. Mine's going to stay with Buddho. And then I'd wake up a few hours later, time for Bindabat. And and it happened every time, and but then once we started doing this, group practice and doing it together, where we all come together, I found it was much easier to do it. And it was much easier for me to sit, to stay awake. And so we do this to support each other in our practice. And it's one of those things you see the influence, your friends and the people around you, your peer group can have on you. Anyone who's a parent knows that especially once the kids start hitting that like teenage years, one of the biggest worries is about them getting into the wrong group of friends, falling into that wrong crowd, because you can see what kind of influence it has on you, and how, that wrong crowd can really, bring someone down, really encourage them to do negative things. So on the flip side, having good friends, a good crowd, a good peer group can do the opposite. It can really bring us up. It can really encourage us to do good things and push us in a good direction. But one of the other benefits of having, good friends is they can also point out stuff to us we don't see ourselves. So we've all got these blind spots in life. These things we do wrong and we just can't see, or things that we could improve on and we just can't see. We've all got it. It's very easy to see them in other people, but we've all got them. So having a good friend who can point out these things to us is really beneficial. So the Buddha had once said that when a monk becomes unadmonishable, it's death in the holy life, because they're not going to grow, because they're not going to listen to things other people point out. So we use, in the monastery, we use the word admonish a lot. It's maybe not the best word for it, because, you think admonish, it's like really heavy, like, a child being scolded by the principal or something. But it's just, when we say that, we just mean pointing out something that we've done wrong or somewhere that we can improve. So it's really good. It's really beneficial to have this. But you have to be really careful when you are trying to point out things to other people, because people can be very sensitive, and you can really hit a nerve, hit a very sensitive spot for people. And so even though your intentions are good, it may have the reverse effect. It may just cause more problems. So for monks, we actually have a lot of rules about giving admonishment to each other. So one of the things is, it has to be factual. So it can't be just, a rumor or something, something we actually know they've done. We also have to establish a heart of loving kindness towards the other person. So, actually have metta there, because a lot of times we can not be very honest with ourselves about why we're doing it. So, someone does something wrong and you want to point it out more as like a weapon. You're trying to hurt them. You're trying to point this out to them. So you're not actually trying to help them. You're not trying to improve. You're like, haha, he did this wrong. I'm going to get him there. I'm going to show him where he was wrong. So we really have to have that heart of loving kindness. And to do that, we also, have to be honest with ourselves. So I'm sure everyone's experienced in life those people, those I tell it how it is kind of people, who will just really say very bluntly, really like coarse reflections to you, like, and they always try to defend themselves, saying, "Oh, it's it's just the way I am. I'm just telling it how it is." But you actually you do have to be skillful with that, and you have to be honest with yourself and be like, "Well, I'm not actually just trying to help the person. I'm just just trying to hurt them or just trying to put them down or make myself feel better." So we do have to have that honesty there. And another thing we have to do is really find the right time and place. Because even if, your intention is good, the reflection you're giving is true, you really want to help this person, the time and place can make a huge difference and to whether they listen or not. So at the monastery I ordained at, we, when I was a junior monk, we had this practice where once a week on what's called the Wanpra, so these are the new moon, the full moon, and the half moon days, all the monks and many of the villagers would stay up all night and meditate through the night. And so one of the things when, you've stayed up all night and then, we just keep going the next day and we go on our morning alms round and then we have our meal. And so when you've been up all night like that, you can get some people can get kind of very sensitive, very irritable. You're very tired. You've been up all night. So we actually had this rule in the monastery. You can't admonish anyone the day after we've been up all night, just to, make sure everything stays calm, no problems or anything. And so, that's an example of like, time and place. So really getting that correctly. And one of the other ones we have is, is to actually ask permission from the other person or let them know before we say something. So you'd be like, "Oh, Venerable, can I talk to you, or can I point something out to you?" Because sometimes we don't know where the other person is. So they may look fine or something, but they may have just had some really bad news. They just found out a loved one was in a car accident, or maybe they didn't sleep the night before, or anything can happen. So sometimes if something is like that, they're not going to be receptive, or it's just going to come off feeling like an attack or a criticism, or it's going to they're just not going to receive it. So we actually do have to ask permission from them beforehand. So that is a good thing for people to do before that. And then the Buddha had given us, so once, we are, able to point stuff out, we can, and to really know the other person as well too, because there are some people in life that, you can't really point stuff out to, they are very sensitive about that. So maybe we can talk to someone who's closer to them, ask them to point it out. But then, so this is just, again, this pointing out our blind spots is another big benefit of having good friends. But, once we have, our good friends, our Kalyana Mitta, it's important for us to, be able to keep them and, live with them and interact with them. So there's this sutta, the Gosinga Sutta, there's two of them. And these are ones about communal harmony and about getting along together. So right before the Gosinga Sutta happens, the Buddha goes to this monastery in Kosambi. It was this very famous event in the suttas called the quarrel at Kosambi. So this is where this monastery, at least the way I read it, it sounds like it's quite a large monastery, a lot of monks there, and a big fight starts in the monastery. So it started over something very little. There was at this monastery, there was a Dhamma teacher and a Vinaya teacher. And I can't remember which one did it, but one of them, after using the washroom, left water in the dipper. And the other one went in and saw this and pointed it out to him. And it was like, oh, actually, that's against the rules. You can't do that. But then the other monk, instead of just accepting that and accepting the admonishment, he got offended. And he's like, oh, well, actually, I didn't break the rules. And then, this conflict between them grew from there. And it got bigger and bigger. And everyone started picking sides until the monastery was like, split down the middle to these two like warring factions. And they were, as the Buddha said, stabbing each other with verbal daggers. So they were just saying awful things to each other. And it was a full-on schism. And the Buddha went there to try to fix this, right? Because, it's important we get along. This is very detrimental to everyone when we have a big split or a big conflict in a monastery. So the Buddha goes there to try to fix this. And the monks just tell him basically to take off, right? They're like, okay, you're in line. We'll deal with this. You just go do your thing now. Which, is when you think about it, is really big because, the Buddha, he's the founder of Buddhism. They ordained out of faith in him and his teaching. And they were so attached to this conflict that they wouldn't even listen to him. And so the Buddha goes to the Gosinga Park, and there's 3 monks living there. And it's the exact opposite. They're getting along great, and they're having really a lot of harmony and stuff together. And the Buddha asks them, like, sorry, how are you getting along so well? And, they say, we view each other with eyes of loving kindness. We speak to each other with words of loving kindness. And, when there's something that the group wants to do, we put down what we want to do what everyone else wants to do. So this first one, this viewing these other people, your friends, your good friends with eyes of loving kindness, you can see, say, because the way we, our proper attention, the way we attend to things can really affect what we see and how we perceive it. So you say, for example, when someone's new in a relationship, they've just met someone. A lot of times, you call it like the honeymoon phase. All they're looking at is the good qualities of the other person. So, oh, they're just so great. It's everything's good about them, and we're so happy and stuff. But then over time, it kind of, it starts switching until, after a little while, it's the exact opposite. All you're looking at is their faults and not seeing the good qualities. So, so with these eyes of loving kindness, we can actively try to see good qualities for them, actively try to see positive things as well. Doesn't mean we blind ourselves to the negative qualities, but we try to actively do this because so much of these things in our life and our practice, we really view, we can come in with the perception like it should just be like this, or I should just be like this. I should just see them with loving kindness, or this should be there. But actually with practice, these are skills, and we can actively develop them. We can actively, take control of our mind like this. So when I was a novice, Lumpur Pasno came to visit Wat Pananachat just after my novice Pansa. And he's from the same part of Canada that I'm from. So, there was I felt comfortable going and talking to him. So I go over to his kuti and we're having a chat. And I was telling him that I was having difficulties being inspired at that point. And he said to me, inspiration is a skill. And this teaching has really stuck with me ever since. And it was really important for me because, I just thought I should be inspired. I'm living in a monastery. I'm living in a forest in Thailand. I'm surrounded by all these monks who are practicing and stuff. I should just be inspired. Or it should be the responsibility of external factors to inspire me. But it's actually, inspiration. This is a mind state, this is something we develop, a skill we learn to do. So it's the same with, say, viewing people with loving kindness, developing loving kindness. This is a skill and that we actually actively develop. We put our effort into developing. And then to speak to someone with words of loving kindness. We all know when you speak to someone face to face, obviously you have words of loving kindness. But in this, they said in private and in public. So it's important, even when we're not around the person, not to be like talking trash about them behind their back or really, saying awful things about them. because, one, of course, it could get back to them, and, that's going to cause a problem. But also, a lot of times the effect it has on us too, when you're really like, you can just look at yourself and your own experience. When you're really like talking bad about someone, it's going to change your perception about them. You'll start getting more negative about them. You're going to start seeing them in a more negative light. And so this is important, not just so that it doesn't, not just because we don't want them to find out we said something bad about them, but we want to look after our own minds in this context. And then, this putting down what I want to do for what everyone else wants to do. And again, this doesn't mean like, if we want to, have friends, we just have to do whatever they do all the time, that, we're just kind of like subservient to them or anything like that. But it is this, like, sometimes, it's just like, okay, this is what everyone's doing. So for the example of, having group meditation, morning chanting or something in the monastery, it's like, okay, well, I'd rather be meditating at my kuti, but, it's important. I'll come to the sala and we'll all meditate together in the meditation hall, because it does create this group harmony, doing things together. And it also does have a really strong quality of training our mind as well, because, you see in life, sometimes people can get really stuck in their ways, when you're always just doing what you want, whenever you want. It's very easy to get stuck like that and not have that flexibility. You can get to that point where everything has to be your way. And if it isn't, you get angry or you get frustrated, and, you see this in other people in life. So having that, being able to give up sometimes what you want to do for what everyone else wants to do, this will have a positive effect on our minds and on ourselves. And so yes, coming to Australia, this has just been, some of the reflections I've been having. And it's nice seeing, a community like this, a group like this, where there's so many people who, do come together and do, practice together, do good together, do wholesome things together, encourage and support each other. And I'd like to offer that to everyone as a bit of a reflection for this morning.
Yeah, we'll just open that up for questions, Ajahn.
Yeah.
So start with the in-person audience. Would anyone like to ask Ajahn a question before we move to online?
Sorry, Ajahn. When did you arrive in Australia?
I arrived mid-March, yeah, about March 14th, 15th, yeah. So I've been here almost 2 months.
Thank you, Ajahn. One question from online. How can I generally prefer time with Kalyana Mita, so spiritual friends, over the ease, comfort, and sensual pleasures of worldly friends?
Sir, can you say that one more time? Sorry, my hearing's not so good.
Sure. How can I generally prefer time with Kalyana Mita, so spiritual friends, over the ease, comfort, and sensual pleasures of worldly friends?
Well, I mean, you have to have a certain balance in your life, right? So, living in the world, we're going to be interacting with everyone in the world. So, we can't just be like, okay, the only people I'm going to talk to or associate are going to be, my Dhamma friends and stuff. But, it's one of those things you have to find a balance for yourself. And so there's no real set, you have to spend, over 50% of your time with your Dhamma friends and less with your non-Dhamma friends. But yeah, just find a balance for yourself, find what's working, and look at the effects it has on us. So, if, you find, say, for example, you're really trying to keep precepts, you don't want to, for example, say, drink alcohol, but, your friends from, and your Dhamma friends, they come to the monastery or come to the center here and, and they're not drinking alcohol, that's nice. But say your worldly friends, whenever you go out with them, they want to drink or they want to to do that and you find that's kind of pulling you down, or and even in situations like that, one of the things you can do is you can just work the situation. So for example, again, you're trying not to drink alcohol, and you find that your friends, when they go out at night or certain things, it's drinking alcohol. You can just try to do stuff with them at different times. Go out with them in the morning times or in the day times. So it's with friends and people in life. You can set up these kind of like boundaries and stuff, and they don't have to know about it. Like you don't have to tell them like, oh, actually I'll only associate with you or hang out with you at these times. But it's okay to do this. So when I was a layman, I had this one friend, and they were explaining that about another friend of theirs, and they're like, yeah, we're super great friends, we get along really well and everything, but I can only see this person about once a month. Any more than that, and it's just too much, and it doesn't go well. So they had set this just in their mind, this kind of boundary with them, and this kind of this kind of standard for them. So we can do that in life with our different friends and stuff. But again, with all these things and all these things in Dhamma practice, it's really good to always come back and start looking at the effects it's having on us. And is this working? Is this not working? How do I need to adjust this? Yeah.
Any questions in the hall? Any more questions online, Ani?
One question from me. What is the purpose of meditating all night?
Okay. So this was one, when I stayed with Lumpur Biak, he really encouraged this practice there, and Lumpur Cha would have us do it once a week. So it's not an easy practice, and it's specifically not meant to be an easy practice. So, and it's, again, staying up all night meditating is going to be a lot harder than doing something else. So when I first went to the monastery, it was pretty freestyle if you wanted to stay up all night. You could just, you didn't have to, and you could be anywhere in the monastery or whatever. So I'd stay up and usually be just chatting with people and drinking coffee, and it was easy. I thought I was really great at this. I was really proud of myself. I've got this, we call it nesajit, and so I've got this down, no problem. But then when Ajahn Kavli became the abbot, it was, you have to stay up all night, but you have to all do it in the meditation hall together, meditating in quiet. And it was so much harder, and you're falling asleep, and so one of the reasons we do it is to be able to overcome, Lumpur Biak would explain, to come Vedana. So to be able to pass beyond these feelings and painful feelings which come up, because, throughout the night, you get sore, you get tired, and you'll get this tiredness coming up where it's just like, you're like, I don't care about anything. Like, I don't care if I have to, if I miss the meal tomorrow and don't eat, I just want to go to sleep. So you're training to push beyond that and push beyond these discomfort and painful feelings. And also throughout the course of the night, what's going to happen is all of the different nivaranas, or all the different hindrances, are going to come up. And so you have to learn to deal with those. Greed is going to come up, aversion's going to come up, sloth and torpor, restlessness, doubts, all these things are going to be coming up throughout the night. And so you have to, push through those and learn to deal with them. And, Lumpur Biak would say that the practice itself is very beneficial. And, if you don't see the results now, you'll see the results in the future. But it's one of these things, like most of the other things we do in practice, it's not a one-time thing. It's something, we have to do again and again, and then you start building up that skill and building up these abilities. And so it's very similar, practice is very similar to, like, say, for example, going to the gym and working out. It takes time, and you have to, a consistent effort over time. And so it's not, you don't go to the gym and then, in the first week or something, you come out, big and ripped or something. It's a slow progression. And so practice is the same way. But it's also really good too if you have to do something the day afterwards. Like, for example, if you have to drive home, have a rest. Because, you don't want to fall asleep at the wheel.
there any questions on it? Yes. There's one behind us also, Dr. Joe. Give it back.
Thank you, Ajahn, for the talk. I do want to ask, because everyone changes, not just by the day, but by the minute, and even by the second. And sometimes I've seen this a lot with some of my friends. Some of my Dhamma friends can become non-Dhamma friends, and some of my non-Dhamma friends can become Dhamma friends. And there are a lot of in between as well. Some manage to, let's say, change their religions because of their friend groups or such. So how do we actually notice, for the first instance, when Dhamma friends are turning into non-Dhamma friends, or vice versa?
Well, I again, just watching, behaviors and stuff like this. So for, example, if they start, doing something which is going to, changing and dragging you down. But it's also important to remember, like you said, people change, and people go through, will go through ups and downs. So, sometimes when we come and start practicing and, start doing this, we think that everything is just going to be a, like going upstairs or up a ladder, where it's just, I'm here, I'm starting practice. It's just going to be this upward trajectory, and everything's just going to get, every day, everything's going to get better. But we really go through it like ups and downs, right? And so, it's with life, with our practice, with our meditation. So, for example, when I was a junior monk, I was staying at Wat Mopjon, and I was in the office chatting with Ajahn Nun, and he asked me, he's like, "Oh, how's your meditation going?" I was like, "Well, sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not." And he just started laughing. He's like, "That's just the nature of meditation. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not." And so with a lot of things, it's ups and downs in life. So if say, you just keep that in mind. So if your friends are, maybe having a rough time, going down, maybe, to not just be like, "Okay, well, you're not a good influence in my life right now, I'm just going to cut you off forever." Just be aware that, they may be going through difficulties, they may be, maybe they just need some time, maybe you just, take a break, or, you just, maybe your relationship is going to be more you giving them support and you encouraging them at this point. Because again, they can come back up, and we all go through difficulties in life and difficult times. And so it's a lot of times when we see that, we don't when we see that in other people, like they're going through that, sometimes we respond really well with, a lot of metta, a lot of loving kindness, a lot of compassion for them, but sometimes we don't, and so, but it is important for us to try to develop and have that for them. But that being said, if someone is, really dragging you down, you don't have to always be in their life. Again, these kind of like the boundaries, or the way we relate to them and the way our friendship is, that can change over times too. So just kind of, be aware of that, and, have some loving kindness for them if they are going through that. But again, don't let them drag you down too much as well. You have to look after yourself as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah.
Is there anything online? No. Dr. Joe.
But with respect to the Kosambi story, so they form two groups.
Yeah.
And they behave like that because of their defilements, of course, their cankers, their aggravated delusion on the base of that. So those come into play very strongly for their behavior, and even the good advice from Buddha could not change. So what I'm trying to say is that we can't change situations by just giving advice or taking advice. We can only change the situation by practicing to get rid of the defilements. I mean, very often in situations we give advice, we give talks, we say, don't do this, don't do that. Things don't work like that. You have to get rid of your defilements, because also these defilements are common to everybody. That's why you can form groups of people taking sides. Because it's very, people get influenced easily. My point is that even Buddha could not change the way they were behaving, taking his advice, because the defilements come into play. It's a stronger part in one's behavior. So if his advice is not good enough, it is you have to practice and get rid of the defilements.
Yep. So you make a really good point there. Like, say, especially with the coral at Kosambi, the coral had nothing to do with water. Even though water in the dipper is what started it, it had to do with like you said, with these defilements, our kilesas, with this sense of self, these attachments we have, and you see that with a lot of these problems with grudges and stuff like that. It's at the end of the day, it's not usually about whether you're right or wrong. It's about winning. It's like, I'm so attached to this. I feel you create this like sense of self around this. And so you want to win. And it's the whole situation is about kilesas, not about water in the dipper. But with giving advice, again, giving advice, it can be beneficial if people listen to the advice and actually want to make a change. But again, you can't force someone to change. They have to actively make that decision to do it. And so, like, even say, just this morning when we're giving the precepts, in English they're called, we use the word precepts, but it's not actually the word. The word is sikapadas, which are trainings. So, when you're saying that, like, I undertake the training to refrain from killing. So, you're actively, it's not you're being forced to do it or anything like this. Like, you're actively, intentionally taking on this training and trying to do that. So with offering advice, it is good. There is, listening to a Dhamma talk, getting advice, because, you're going to hear something you didn't hear before. You can sometimes get a different perspective on it. So it can be good. But at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the people. They have to make the choice. So even with the example of Kosambi, you had the Buddha giving them the advice, the person you'd think they'd listen to the most, and they didn't want to. There was just their kilesas were too strong at that point. And you can really see it in yourself when, a really strong, defilement, a really strong, like, negative mood, emotion comes into your mind, and the way it almost intoxicates it and changes the way you view things. So, for example, with anger, you get really angry at someone, and then, say, for example, you thought someone did something, and that anger comes up, and you're like, yeah, they're like this, and everything about them is bad. In your mind, they've never done anything good, and you just see them really, really negatively, and it completely takes over the mind, right? And then you find out, actually, they didn't do that, and you're like, and it just can flip, and you're like, yeah, they're not so bad, actually, they're a pretty good person. And so these strong, defilements will affect the way, we think about it and we perceive situations. So that's why it's really good, when, you do have a really strong emotion, like, you have really strong anger coming up, or, for example, is if it's possible to really try not to act on that, when you have that, I'm going to tell him, I'm going to say this and this to him, to really try to, like, okay, I'll, some situations, maybe at your job or something, you do have to act right away. But in other situations, it's better just cool down first, take a break, cool down. Okay, I'll address this situation when I've calmed down. And one of the things you find is, when you've calmed down, when you've pacified that anger and it's not in the mind, you'll find that the situation looks completely different. And you're like, oh yeah, I'm so glad I didn't say anything, I'm so glad I didn't, because that would just make the whole thing worse. So.
Question online.
Yep.
I find that I get bored with my worldly friends. I'm good for about half an hour, but that's it. Is that normal?
It can be. I've seen for myself when I was getting more into, as a layman, and getting more serious about Dhamma practice, and I've heard other people talk about their experiences with Dhamma practice, is that as you get more into it, you're maybe not as interested in the same things you were before. So it's going to be really personal. But again, a lot of times, we can in life have some of our friends, who a lot of times it is just we have shared interests. So it's, say for example, everyone is your friends are all into watching a certain sport. Like Canada would be hockey. I guess here it'd be Australian rules football or soccer, but and that's your thing. And then all of a sudden you stop. You're just not really interested in hockey anymore. But you might discover that most of your relationship was actually based on that we all like hockey, or we all go to the games together. So there'll be other friends where you still do have that connection. You still can have fun, but it can be normal. Yeah.
There was a question. Jeffrey got a follow-up. There was another question behind. There was. Could I pass it on to him first?
I've sort of come across some interesting conversations lately where there seems to be a sort of a pattern where I've got friends who are coming out of a rains retreat, and they find it very hard to adjust to the outside world. They find that that's quite a shock. And then I've got other friends who are meditating quite extensively now, and that they're finding it hard to adjust in crowded situations, like going to the mall or something like that. They find it quite irritating. I was just wondering if you had any sort of words of loving kindness or compassion that you could suggest for those people, or is that just something that you have to kind of work through?
I had the same experience, after being a monk for a while, several years, and especially, you're living in the monastery and we're not going out, we're not going to shopping malls or anything like that. And then, all of a sudden going into a situation like, say my parents came to visit in Thailand and I take them to go see one of those big temples in Bangkok, right? And it's just crazy amounts of people. I got completely overwhelmed, and even my parents were noticing. They're like, "Wow," and because part of it, you've been, you making your mind peaceful. Everything's calming down, slowing down, and then all of a sudden, boom, you go 180 and completely the other way around. And so it's very normal in the beginning. But as you keep going, it's going to, you're going to get better at it. And it's important not to get frustrated with it. And because again, it's very easy for us when we have one of these situations, we can make it a lot worse. So it's like, you get angry, and then, you get angry at yourself for being angry, and, it's just creating more anger. And so in a situation like that, it's good for them not to really come down hard on themselves. And just, try to find a balance which is working for them, and just be aware that it's not always going to be like that. It's not that, if you're practicing, you can never interact in the world, or it's going to be too difficult, and just really, them be patient with themselves, and it improves, gets better, but it's just happens in the beginning. Yeah.
Thank you.
When I stayed with Lumpur Biak, I spent a number of years with him, and his monastery is in this, just on the outskirts of Bangkok, right near the old airport. So when they had started the monastery back in the 70s, it was in the middle of nowhere. All you could see was fields and stuff. But then Bangkok grew really fast, so it's very small. It's like a narrow strip, and you have houses very close to your kuti. Closer than probably where you're sitting from me, and so you have the city there. And Lumpur Biak would talk about it. He'd talk about the difference between, he'd call it samadhi with arome versus samadhi without arome. So he was saying samadhi without aroma is aroma like sense impingements, or and so you'd he said, you go to the forest and it's super quiet, super peaceful. And he said, yeah, for most people, it's very easy to make the mind peaceful there. But then, you can come out of that situation and it can all fall apart, But he said with his monastery, it was developing samadhi with aroma, so with these sense impingements, which he said is much more difficult. But he said, if you can do it, it's much firmer. And so, but that's not encouraging people to find, really loud, busy situations to practice. But, the Buddha did encourage solitude and quiet. But just I'm saying this to kind of illustrate that, even Lumpur Biek had talked about that, going from a really quiet environment to coming out of it, it can overwhelm you. It can be hard to keep the practice going. Yeah. But you just keep going with it. Yeah.
Then I'll ask another question. So just living in a Western country, you've noticed that many people actually respect the idea of individualism, which is opposed to several Asian countries like China and several Southeast Asian countries, where the how would you say the greater good comes from a family or a group of people, but at the same time you do actually notice that a number of Asian countries, they are starting to become a little bit more individualist. What do you think about the culture of individualism in the West and a growing number of Asian countries?
Well, it's one of these things. It's I haven't really thought about it before, in regards to that. But it's say in at least the context of Dhamma practice, there is it is very individual, but it's with because it's about developing yourself, and only we can become enlightened on our own. But it's one of these things you see with a lot of times in a lot of things in Dhamma practice. You're holding almost, if sometimes feels like you're holding two different things in mind, and trying to find the balance between them. So you have to find that balance between actually taking responsibility for yourself, developing yourself. There's a lot about the self, but you have to not get into becoming really self-centered or attached to the self, and and selfish and stuff like that. So you really have to find that balance between it. So it's the same. You'll be told in practice, you have to put forth a lot of effort. You have to put that into it, but also that you have to have it with a bit of letting go, and not with not pushing too hard. So you just have to you have to find that balance. But yeah, in practice we do have to do the work ourselves, at least. So we can't expect anyone else to do it for us. Yeah.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Yeah.
Question online.
Yeah.
Ajahn mentioned that inspiration is a skill. Can you please provide some ways to stay inspired on the path, especially in face of low or nil energy? Thank you very much for your wonderful talk.
So ways to stay inspired. Again, these are going to be very individual, and you have to try out different things. And what inspires you right now might not be what inspires you tomorrow. So it's good to develop a few different skills and be able to keep working on this. So for some people, it can be reading suttas, reading about the the great monks in the time of the Buddha, or reflecting on the Buddha himself and what he's done for us. you can find sometimes, people in the suttas and some of those monks can be a little more abstract because, you can't really see them. They're just, someone in these books. But so sometimes, reading the biography of, contemporary monks, where you actually can see pictures of them, you can meet them, you can listen to their Dhamma talks, see videos of that. So sometimes reading that can give rise to inspiration. Sometimes just having a really good Dhamma discussion with friends, that can really, sometimes you have this really great Dhamma discussion. You're like, oh yeah, I just really want to go do some walking meditation now, or I really want to go sit. I find getting some Dhamma every day in your life, for me, I find that really helps, kind of keeps you your mind on the goal. So I remember Lumpur Suchat one time when I went to go see him. He's this disciple of Lungta Mahabua in Thailand, and he speaks perfect English. And he was talking about when he was a junior monk, he used to read suttas for an hour a day. And but it wasn't because he was trying to study or build up the knowledge and stuff. He was saying this helped him keep his mind on practice and his mind in Dhamma. So one of the things also is you can reflect on, because we have lots of these different things we can reflect on. You can reflect on stuff like old age, sickness, and death. And be like, okay, I don't know when I'm going to die. I could die at any time. So that can give rise to the sense of urgency of, or I really want to practice. And so, there's just all these different little tools and reflections we can use. But like with a lot of the other things, you have to work a bit at developing them and, and have a few on hand. So it's like, again, reading about, the suttas and, one day it might really inspire you. You might be like, oh yeah, all these monks, they were doing really great. But then another day, you might read it and be like, oh wow, these monks really got it and I don't, So it's like, look, this guy, this monk, he listened to one Dhamma talk and he became enlightened, but that didn't work for me, And so, I remember Lumpur Pasno said once, sometimes reading the Vinaya can be a little more inspiring because, again, the sutras are the monks who got it. Everything went really well for them. The Vinaya is the monks who didn't get it. And so these are the bad behaved monks. And, it can be like, well, I'm better than they are, at least I'm behaving a little better than that. So, you just have to, this is something, it becomes very personal. It becomes very individual. And you just have to try out a few of these different things. Yeah, it's the same with picking a meditation object that works. You have to just try a few out and you might find one works for you better than another one does. Yeah.
Any more questions?
This is not basically a question, Bhante. Just to thank you for your presence in the Discord, and in the mornings we look forward to seeing you when you do the guided meditation in the mornings. And thank you so much for your guidance and wish you all the best and look forward to seeing you in Discord. And thanks to the team of technical team for doing this Discord, because it's very nice to see a lot of people around the world joining in the meditations and all the discussions.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, no problem. But to be honest, I was kind of cheating a bit because I was in Canada. So when you guys were all sitting early in the morning, it was mid-afternoon there, so it was much easier for me. So, but yeah, no, it was very nice. It was very nice. It was a very new experience to me as well, because most of my experience with Dhamma and practice and stuff has been in Thailand, in the monastery. So we didn't. We never did guided meditations and stuff, so it was new to me, and I found it a very valuable experience as well. Yeah.
Okay. Any more? Any online questions?
Yes, just one. Can spiritual friends be people who are not Buddhist, but people who follow similar morality and ethics?
I think so. Someone who's encouraging you to go in a good way, because again, it's I think I think it can, you know, just but with these friends, you just have to, you know, just be really aware. Look at the way they're encouraging you to go, and look at the things they're, you know, you're doing, and how it's, you know, benefiting you, benefiting them. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we've got time for one more question here.
Hi. You mentioned talking about community and how powerful and positive it can be to be in a community where they may shift you from a negative viewpoint or give you that different perspective that pulls you out from the negative space that you're in. So I just wanted to ask if you have a mantra or advice for when you are doing that inner work and you recognize that maybe you are in a negative space or you're having that negative, angry energy to a situation, and something that you can use to try to challenge that and pull yourself into a different perspective.
For me, one of the most important things is the initial part of recognizing that, because a lot of times, you know, you can actually like be in a bad mood or in a grumpy mood and not realize it. So for me, like the most important thing initially is just recognizing that. So for example, you know, you might find that if you're getting irritable, and you know, you notice that things that don't normally irritate you are there, or you might notice this just kind of little like sometimes it's almost a physical feeling of, you know, this low level irritation there, or you find that something has gotten you angry or irritated you, and you've managed to let go of that, and then something else right away makes you feel that same way. So when, you know, I recognize that, you know, when you see that there, it's good to be like, okay, I'm in a mood today. You know, let's be on guard, like be really extra careful and just put extra mindfulness into that. But some of the other reflections is like, you know, you can just like, is this really that important? You know, have I felt this way before? You know, just like this reflection on impermanence. So it'll be like, have I felt this way before? And it's like, especially when it comes on really strong. And it's like, yeah, I felt this way before. And then, you know, well, what happened to it? Well, you know, it went away, you know, so because a lot of times when, you know, when something happens in life, you know, we have this, even though we know on one level that it's impermanent, you know, it doesn't necessarily feel that way, you know, on like the felt level. So, you know, it feels like, you know, when things are going great, you know, it feels like, oh, it's always going to be like this, you know, even though we've been told it's not, you know, it just, you know, you kind of feel that it's always going to be like this. And then when it changes, of course, you know, we suffer. Or when things are going bad, you know, you feel, oh, it's always going to be bad, you know, in this, but it's going to change, you know, the Buddha guaranteed it's impermanent, it's going to change. And so I find just reminding yourself of the impermanence and in these situations, and, you know, or also you could try reflecting on, okay, if I do act on this, you know, I'm angry right now, you know, what kind of consequences could it be? So for example, you know, say you're in a bit of a bad mood, but you're out with your friends, and, you know, a good friend is doing something which is really irritating you, and you just lose it, and you say one of those things you can't take back. You know, what could happen? You could, you know, permanently lose this friend just because you're in a bad mood. Or for example, or you're at work, you know, you're at work and someone's really doing something wrong, you know, and really getting you angry, you know, and you want to act on it, but you reflect, okay, you know, if I do this, I could lose my job over that. You know, is this situation worth that, you know? And so, you know, just reflecting that there are these, you know, consequences to the actions. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Oh, no problem.
It's probably time we wrap up and just move on to some announcements.
Okay, for sure.
So I've got quite a number of announcements today. It is Vesak, so you'll have to bear with me. It's the biggest, sort of busiest time of the year for us. So just before I get to the Vesak ones, so just a brief thank you to everyone who was involved who took the time over Easter to paint the Buddha local halls. If you weren't here last week, you would notice. Hope you noticed today that it's been freshly painted. Just want to give a big shout out to everyone who came and volunteered and painted and did all the cleaning up afterwards. So Thank you very much to everyone involved. Also, last week we had our the BSV's annual general meeting, and we had a pretty good turnout with 45 members attending in person and 9 people online. The AGM was significant in that it saw our previous president, Adrian, step down from the role, and Indira Jayasinghe, who's also here, stepped down from the role of vice president. Both have contributed many years of incredibly outstanding service to the society, and we offer them gratitude and thanks for their selfless work. A list of the new members will be posted on the Buddha Loka pin board in the next few days. Also, today we have our monthly lay discussion, and that runs on the first Sunday of the month. So if you want to sort of put this into your calendar, interested in that. We have our monthly lay discussion led by Dr. Jaya and Satish Wimalajiva. It's open. It's an open forum to discuss topics on the Dhamma, exchange views, and learn the Buddha's teachings from some very knowledgeable Buddhist practitioners. It starts at 12:30 p.m. and goes till 1:30. It'll be up in the library, and if you're interested, please join in. Generally, we'll sort of continue the conversation from today's discussion. So it's a really great forum. Okay, some upcoming events. So first, I'll start with the retreats. At the retreat centre, Ajahn Vimokkha's weekend retreat from the 23rd to the 25th. That's currently open. The tickets, registrations, it's getting close to the limit there. And then also for the Bhante Bodhi and Bhante Chunda 3-day retreat over Labour Day from the 6th of June to the 9th of June. That's now in wait list. Also, now, next week, quiz time. Does everyone know what's going on next week? We do know what's going on next week. It's Vesak. Where's it going to be held at? At Newbury at the retreat centre. What time does it start at? 9 o'clock. Yeah, 9:30 is the official. I'm not hearing much voices over here. So it's 9 o'clock's it sort of starts at, but 9:30 is the official start. It goes till 12:30 p.m. There's an afternoon session which is really, really great. It's a novice ordination. And this is a pretty historic event for us. Okay, so Conrado, who's our Anagarika, he'll be taking on going in towards the robe. So that will run from 1 to 2 p.m. So the morning and the afternoon sessions will be live streamed. So you can check the website or the newsletter for more details. And now we invite all parts of the BSV, the Dhamma School, the Teens Group, the City Zen, the Buddha Loka Centre. Everyone's invited. We'd love to see all parts of the BSV come and attend that. Now the bus tickets. Now, anyone going on the bus? No one going on the bus here? Okay. So if you are going on the bus, you need to be here by 7:15 a.m. for a 7:20 a.m. departure. And then Sunday the 18th of May. Thanks, Indira. I checked last night. There was about 11 tickets still available. So if you did want to catch the bus. Okay. So Sunday the 18th of May, which is Sunday week, we have a smaller scale event here, which is a small scale Vesak event organised by the Dhamma School here at the Buddha Loka Centre. See the newsletter for more details. Ajahn Nisarana will be delivering the Sunday Dhamma talk, and there will be a Dhamma School presentation at 12:30 p.m. And that is being led by the Dhamma School. We're really grateful for the effort that they're putting into this as well. And then Saturday the 17th of May, a special one-day Dhamma teaching and meditation led by Lang Twa. Can somebody help me with this one? No, Naro. I didn't practice this one. I apologise. Yes, so please check the newsletter or the website for more details. Now, this week's teaching program. So tomorrow night, we've got Ajahn Nando giving the guided meditation. And Tuesday night, layperson layperson meditation led by Sandeep Kaki. And then, of course, we've got Monday to Friday nights at 7 p.m. We've got Make Meditation a Healthy Habit. They're 20-minute sits on Discord, twice a week led by a monastic. And New Day, New Mind, which is still running between 4 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. We're missing you, Ajahn. We are. Since you dropped off, the numbers have really dwindled. So please come back.
Yeah, I'll have to when I get back to Canada and finish my travels.
Right, thank you. And then Sunday morning, next Sunday, nothing happening here at Buddhaloka. Monday night, Ajahn Sadhara will be taking the guided meditation. And that's it for announcements. Thank you very much, everyone. Please join us next door for the lunch dana. And we look forward to seeing lots and lots of you over at Vesak. Okay.
Yeah.